All right, so we're going to talk about family as a client. So this has a picture of an elephant, and it says that a baby elephant has a 22-week gestational period. So instead of being pregnant for 9 months, they're pregnant for 22 months. I would love that, actually. I loved being pregnant. I was big and fat and happy and ate cheeseburgers all the time. It was wonderful. So I guess I wouldn't mind being pregnant for 22 months, although I might be as big as an elephant by the end. And when they're born, they typically stand 3 feet tall. They weigh about 200 pounds. When the calf is born, the mom, the aunts, the cousins, everybody takes care of it because it's a very matriarch type of society. The mama elephant leads and kind of takes over, and all the aunts and girl cousins and all them kind of help. And that's the way this family is made up. And as we know, there's all different types of families, and they are super influential in how we are kind of developed and how we function. So for patients, when we're talking about pediatric patients, it's going to be important to understand their family, their values, their structure, how they made up, how they deal with stress, because that's going to help us take better care of them. If we don't understand where they're coming from, we're not going to do a good job. The family is their one constant in their life, for children especially. And if we don't get a good understanding of the family, we won't do a good job making sure that child gets better. So, for pediatric nursing, our major goal is to improve the quality of health care for all children. And we do that through health promotion. The big thing is anticipatory guidance and injury prevention for children. The children are developing fast. For those, several of you raised your hand and have children. Hopefully some of you have worked with children, maybe have nieces, nephews. You see that they go in these very predictable growth stages. And we know what's going to happen. So our job is to get parents ready for that next stage so that they're not going to get hurt, not going to get injured. So the essential components, like I said, is that anticipatory guidance, injury prevention, nutrition. Nutrition's huge for kids because that's one of the main factors for growth and development. Immunizations, and I won't totally get on my soapbox, but you should totally do them. They don't cause autism. And dental care. These are the objectives we're going to be covering. Families, theories, structure, function, roles. I'm sure you all can read by now. You've made it through your 3rd semester of nursing school. So how do we define family? I think your definition's on page 15 of the 10th edition. And it says, family is an institution where individuals related through biology or enduring commitments and representing similar or different generations and genders participate in roles involving mutual socialization, nurturance, and emotional commitment. That sounds like a great definition, huh? So we basically say that family is like pain. It's whatever people say it is, okay? So just like when we say pain is whatever the person says it is, or, is the quality of whatever the person describes, family is whatever you think family is. Maybe your family is your best friend. Maybe your family is grandparents or sisters or whatever. It's your definition. So we can't define one type of family. And that's why it's so important that we take the time to understand where our patients' families are coming from. It's across the nursing board. You really should understand the role of your patient within their family, but it's especially true in pediatrics. So how do each one of these describe a family? Biology. So biologically, a family fulfills the biological function of populating the species, right? Families reproduce. We make more of ourselves to populate the world. Psychology, this looks at the interpersonal aspects and basically is responsible for the development, your personality development. So if you met my son, he is my little mini me when it comes to, I'm very outgoing, some would say loud, and my son is the epitome of his little personality like that. He's very outgoing, very loud, so it just kind of helps with that. Economics, this views the family as a productive unit of society. It provides material needs for its members. It provides economic contribution to society. And sociology, again, this is where a social unit interacting within the larger society. There are 3 different family theories. And these are on page 16 of the 10th edition, table 2.1. And these theories kind of describe how a family functions, reacts. So the family systems theory is saying that the family is a system that continually interacts with its members and the environment. And that emphasis is on the interaction. So problems don't lie with any one member. So if a child is sick, that sickness doesn't affect just that child. It's going to affect the whole system. Because a child that's in the hospital, now, let's say it's a single mom, and she's got 3 total kids, and one of her kids is in the hospital. Now, that one sick kid doesn't act just by itself. That sick kid is now going to put a strain on mom, because now how is she going to be at the hospital because she wants to be with her sick child at the hospital, but she's got 2 other kids that she needs to get to school, and she's got a job that she needs to get to, and she can't lose that job, because if she loses the job, how is she going to provide for her family? So it looks at a family as, like I said, a little system. And when you have any part of that system affected, it's going to affect the whole system. It doesn't just happen, by itself, independently. So the nurse is going to focus on those interactions between the family members. The family stress theory explains how families react to stressful situations. And families encounter stressors. Some are predictable, some aren't. So there's stress. You guys are all in school right now. You have partners, you have children, you have, jobs, and right now you have a predictable stress of, I have my demands of school and my demands of home and my demands of work. So I know my stressors. Sometimes they're unpredictable. Maybe there's an unexpected death in the family. Maybe you get into a bad car accident. And those stressors don't have to always be negative. They could be positive things, like having a baby is totally happy. Going, like Dr. Lewis, taking her daughter to college for the first time. She was super stressed all weekend. Making sure, decorating the dorm room, making sure her daughter had everything, moving her out of the house for the first time. It was happy and exciting, but it's a stress on that family. So when a family experiences too many stressors, it's not going to cope as well. All right? And we're going to talk in a little bit about vulnerable families don't work as well as families that have a lot of, positive aspects. So looking at that, will interact and determine how well the family does. And then the last theory is Duval's developmental theory. And it describes the 8 developmental tasks of the family throughout its lifespan. And we're going to talk about Erikson. He's one of our theorists. And right now we're talking about pediatrics and family as an overview. I apologize if Dr. Chastain's already gone over this, but on each one of your tests, you will have a specific age group that you will be, learning about. So for test 1, it's going to be infants, and then we're going to talk about toddlers, and then preschoolers, and school age, and adolescents. And so we're going to learn about each one of those. And when we're learning about each one of them, we're going to talk about, motor skills, language skills, growth and development, and the theorists, like what stage they should be learning. So you're going to end up loving your theorist. Okay, I just wanted to see if y'all were awake. So with Duvall's developmental theory, they're working through. So in stage 1, it's joining of a family, of a marriage. So 2 people get together and they become, a unit. And then the second stage, they have a child, an infant. And then that infant becomes a preschooler, and then a school age, and then a teenager. And as you're going through those, your family changes because I'm probably right in between stages 4 and 5 right now. And I can tell you through these stages, when I had an infant, my life was very different. I would go to work and I came home every day and just sat with a baby on me. It was they smell so good. It was very different. And then when I got a preschooler, then I started going on those play dates that you hear about where all the moms just stand awkwardly while toddlers share spit toys together. And then you get to a school age child where they now have activities like Dr. Chastain's, I don't know if she mentioned this too, I apologize, totally missed her whole hour. Our sons do gymnastics together, so now we have school age children that are doing activities together. Now I'm living life with a teenager, so my 11, almost 12-year-old wants to be very independent. She's trying to find that balance between independence for her and letting her grow and be her own person, and me having control, which I'm losing very fast. And then the launching center, that teenager becomes old enough, they go out on their own. The middle-aged family, that's when that couple that started together kind of rediscovers who they are as a couple and starts doing activities. And then the aged family is when that couple now is entering retirement and what they're going to do. And just the shifts, your life shifts. And that's just basically what this theory focuses on, is that the family's structure shifts as the family continues to grow and the children change. And again, through all of these, it's important to kind of understand because it allows us to provide anticipatory guidance for them. If we know, with the stress theory, what stressors are on the family, then we can provide adequate anticipatory guidance for them. Okay, we know you're having a baby. Let's look. Who's going to help you take care of that baby? What resources do you have? Do you have any outside support? Are you all alone? Are you going to be a single parent? If you worked full time and can't work because you have to take care of the baby, who's going to help you? Or we know which stage you're about to go into. Are you ready to have a teenager that's going to want a phone and start learning how to drive? Because I don't. I need lots of anticipatory guidance for that right now. So that's where we come in as a nurse. If we understand it, then we can help families guide through that. So, and this is basically just what I just said. Interventions depend on the model that's being used. So there's different types of family. The family structure. A nuclear family is 2 parents and 2 children. It's different than a traditional nuclear. So traditional nuclear, I would say Dr. Chastain's family. She has herself, her husband, her 2 biological children. That's her traditional nuclear family. A nuclear family is 2 adults and children, but those children don't necessarily have to be biological. They can be an adopted child, a foster child, but there's 2 parents that are married or have a partnership and have children. Binuclear is when that married couple, mom and dad, separate, and they still are parenting the children, but they have not remarried or, have anyone else significant in their life. There's blended or reconstituted. That's like the Brady Bunch, right? Where mom and dad each have kids and they marry somebody else with kids, and now it's one big happy family. Isn't that
Brady
even?
Bunch is kind of dating.
Okay, well, what do you want me to say? I don't know.
I have no idea. His, hers, and ours.
Huh?
His, hers, and ours.
Oh, okay. Isn't it on the CW or something?
Oh,
I don't know. No.
it was a movie.
Oh, then I don't know. You can see my life is real. Extended family, that would be something like what I'm experiencing right now. My mom passed away and my dad moved in with us. So it's me, my husband, my 2 kids, and Grandpa. He lives upstairs. He says he's the old man in the attic. He's not really. I let him out like once a day. No. There is single parents, which I think that's pretty self-explanatory, right? A parent that's single. Poly, you can never say this. Polygamous. I never can say. I always want to say poly first. Polygamous. Where last night when we were doing introductions, we played 2 truths and a lie, and one guy said, "I have 3 kids and 3 wives in 1 car," and his lie, of course, was that he had 3 wives. Have you played 2 truths and a lie? 2 realsies and a whopper? Okay. Gay, lesbian, gay, 2 men, lesbian, 2 women. We talked about traditional. And communal is like when you think of, like I think Mormons. They're a religious group, or I don't want to say cult, or some kind of group. I don't know the right word to say without. I'm not meaning to offend anyone, but it's basically a bunch of families that live together, and they're typically, like I said, Mormons. That's not being mean, but that's a typical. You'll see that. But they live all together, very close knit. They function as a family. They either live on a compound together, like I think of my sister, actually. My sister and her husband live next door to her brother-in-law and his wife, and they literally like have a fence around both houses. I'm always like, this is weird. But it works for them because they have one big backyard. So communal is that on a grander scale. So there's all types, and none of these are black and white. It's not like you can only be, an extended family or gay, lesbian, or whatever. They kind of, overlap each other a little bit depending on your situation. But it's just, there's all different ways families are structured. So their function. So basically the function of the family is the interaction of those family members. And how well they interact depends on how well the family functions. So the purpose of family is all these different things. We already said to reproduce, right? We want to make more of ourselves. Protection. And that protection is not just physical protection, like we as parents protect our children. It's emotional protection. I have 3 sisters, and we can fight like cats and dogs. But let me tell you, if anyone was to say anything bad about me, my sisters would be after them. They would emotionally protect me. Survival, we provide things like shelter, food, support, economic support, emotional support, recreation, fun stuff. That's who do we do fun things with? Our friends, but our family, right? Vacations, go to the park together. Sometimes it's, yelling, but most of the time fun. No. Religion. Most people learn their religion from their family, from their parents. It may not be the parents, maybe it's the grandparents or an aunt and uncle, but most people have a religion that's similar to someone close in their family. Now, now with families becoming more, getting bigger, changing, we might see more influence of, friends, but you first learn about religion in your family. Status, it helps buffer stress. They instill cultural values. They teach health beliefs, whether they believe in traditional medicine, whether they believe in holistic medicine, how they approach health in general. My dad lives with us, and he comes down and eats with us a couple times a week, and he's always absolutely mortified because I'm very open with my children, and he's very more, I would say more conservative. And I mean, my daughter, when she was 3, would talk about her vagina like she's talking about her thumb, like, and because it was very just, and my dad would be like, oh my God, make her stop, and because it's just a different way, and so you'll learn what that family feels comfortable with. Socialization, how they interpret societal changes. So the family has a lot of purposes, right? We don't think of it that way, but if you think about it, who kind of shaped who you were? I mean, yes, you're friends and you're your own person, but where did you get a lot of these values, beliefs from? Your family. So how do these things influence the family? So this looks like a Duggar family right here. So the way, how big your family is going to influence it. If you're a small family with 1 or 2 children, then, the children have a lot more, it's more democratic, like you might vote as a family or say like, the children seem to have a little bit more input, right? Because the parents have more time. Whereas bigger families, they have to learn to kind of just survive, right? If there's 8 kids, there's not a lot of voting going on. This is what we have today. And there's not necessarily a right or wrong way with either one of those. You're going to get different qualities, good and bad, from both of them. It's going to affect larger families. The kids tend to be more independent because they have to survive, right? Like, if you're the 7th kid, you learn at like 2. If I want a peanut butter sandwich, I got to get up in that like feeding frenzy because I'm going to be the last one if I don't get up in there and make my peanut butter sandwich. But if there's only 2 of us, mom may have more time to make each meal individually. So there's pluses and minuses to both of them. Like I said, neither one's wrong or right. It's just going to affect how they are. Sibling interactions. That's a lot of the time birth order. They talk about the older child, the middle child, the baby. I know in my family, we follow that path pretty well. I'm number 2 in the line, but my older sister's 6 years older. So she acts more like a only child. Like, because she lived by herself for 6 years, she oftentimes functions as an only. I am the overbearing, dominant, older child. The number 3 acts very much like a middle. Number 4 is the baby. Everybody takes care of her. So it doesn't happen that way always in every family, but you oftentimes see, the position, the birth order come into effect, multiple births. I can't imagine having 2 or 3 babies at one time. Having 1 baby was good for me at one time. Parenting styles. There is 3 main types of parenting styles. The one that we want is authoritative, okay? And that's where the parents say, don't touch the stove because if you do, it may be hot and you'll burn yourself. That's authoritative. I'm telling you what's right and wrong, but I'm telling you why it's right or wrong. I'm giving you that knowledge. Versus a permissive, okay, well, if you want to touch the stove, you can, where the child kind of takes over. And that's not good. We don't want that, total child. And some people are like, well, they've got to learn, and this gives them the freedom to explore the world. Kids, every study will show you, if you ever go out in public, they will show you that a kid who has total control with that permissive parenting style, it doesn't function well. Kids need boundaries. They need to know limitations, expectations for them, and a permissive style doesn't do that. And then there is, I always say this wrong, authoritarian. Did I say that right? All right, authoritarian. It's different than authoritative. Authoritarian is, don't touch the stove because I said so. Don't go outside because I said so. Don't do this because I said so. You never know why. The child doesn't understand. My kids were home yesterday with Grandpa. I don't want you guys to go outside while Mommy's not home because if someone came that I don't know, I can't protect you. Okay, they got that. Versus, Okay, I don't know why I can't go outside. I don't even know what's out there. Maybe there's a monster out there. Kids don't cope well. So we want that authoritative because we want them to kind of know their limits, know their expectations, but know why they have those limit and expectations. They can't be so strict that I have all these limitations, but I don't know why, or so free with permissive that I have no limitations because, I'm just going to go free and whatever. And those affect how the family interacts. All those things. Did you have a question back there? Or did I? Okay. So these things are factors that affect the transition to parenthood, although I would argue, and I mean maybe most of you who have children would argue, nothing can prepare you for childhood. They say the best years to have a child is 18 to 35. I think that's changing. We're seeing it shift to a much older population now. I personally don't think any 18-year-old is really ready. I was my early 20s and I wasn't ready.
I was 34 and I wasn't ready. I panicked.
Yeah.
I'm kidding. When my husband left after, he stayed for 2 weeks and then he left, to go to work, and I almost had a panic attack. And I was a nurse practitioner, but I still was like, oh my God, what if he cries? What if,
That's exactly how I felt.
Out.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it was crazy. It's bad.
I remember the nurses, and I was the same. I was a pediatric nurse practitioner. I was telling other people how to take care of their children.
Exactly.
And then I remember asking the nurse, and I had the baby, and they were like, all right, watch this video and go home. And I was like, you're just going to let me go home with this baby? You're not going to check me out and make sure I'm safe or know what I'm doing? And they're like, do we need to? And I was like, and I didn't want the baby, I didn't ever want her to go to the nursery. I wanted her to stay, but I could have stayed at the hospital for a good 2 weeks. Fine. I just wanted them there just in case. And I remember the oddest feeling. We were driving home, me and my husband and my daughter in the back seat, and we got home and we had her in the car seat and we just sat her on the coffee table and we both stared at her and we were like, what do we do? Can we watch TV? Do we eat? It just felt, I vividly remember sitting there staring at her in her car seat okay, I don't know what to do. So it's just, and I read every stupid parenting book. I mean, like I said, I was a pediatric nurse practitioner. I knew everything about it, but it was still such a weird transition. Maybe other people do better, but
Can I ask you something?
yeah.
Do you think that there being a huge age gap between older and younger siblings, 17, 18, 25 years, that can help prepare for parenthood?
So what they say is the best time, 2 to 4 years age difference is the worst, they say. Which is how old my children are apart, so whoops. They say that causes the most resentment and the most discord is when you have children that are between 2 and 4 years of age close to each other. They say greater than if they're 4 to 6 years apart, that siblings and families do better with that. So did I answer that question or no?
For example, I was 18 years old when my baby sister was born, and I had my kid, and it was just whatever. It was...
So, oh yeah,
was
I think that's... Yes, I think that if you grew up with a baby in your house, because you were 18 and your baby sister was born, so then when you had a baby, you're like, oh, I helped my mom do this. I 100% think that makes that transition different. Because for me, I was the first one in my family to have kids. So when my sister had kids, she literally, instead of going home, she came to my house, my baby sister. And I was like, what are you doing here? And she's like, what do I do? And, because I had already gone through it. And a lot of things my sister has followed in my footsteps. My niece and nephew go to the preschool my 2 children went to. They go to the aftercare program my kids go to. She literally parents the way I parent. Because she's like, Amanda did it, I'm going to do it. So I think that, yes, if you are older, when you have a younger sibling, that definitely prepares you more because you remember those transitions. So, definitely. Parenting education is better. We have all those books, but again, no book is going to help you. I shouldn't say that. Read them. They're good. They're informational. No, your books are really helpful, your pediatric books, but no. And support systems. What kind of support system do you have? Does that, does it make that transition easier? When we announced that we were pregnant when I was 4 months along, and my parents lived in West Palm Beach, my mom came to visit the next weekend, and my parents had been married for 40 years. She bought a house and told my dad she was moving because she needed to be near her grandbabies. Because, like I said, I was the first one. So I was lucky because I had my mom living down the street from me to help me, and but some people don't have that. They don't live by family. They don't live. My husband would say we probably have too much family interaction, but it's nice and support. Family strengths and functioning. So the qualities of a strong family, things that make them function well. They have a commitment to each other. They appreciate each other. They encourage each other. They spend time together. They have a purpose. I feel lucky. My kids are pretty good, and I'm not just saying that because they're mine, because Dr. Chastain has heard me complain about them also. I get frustrated with them. I get, just like any other parent. But, we constantly talk about, our family's role together and how we help each other out. And yesterday, my kids didn't start school till today, so most of the county started Monday. So they were home with Grandpa yesterday, and God bless them, they washed all the sheets in the house, because I said, Mommy needs help, and we've got to get this done, and I worked 12 hours yesterday. I was here for a long time. And they, washed all the sheets and made all the beds, and they felt like a purpose, okay, we helped Mommy, and then we're going to go get ice cream. Knowing a purpose together, working together, that makes a family feel strong because the kids feel like they're contributing. They actually like that kind of stuff. They like feeling like they're helping and they're part of something. It makes them really function well. But there's things, and if you're positive about it, it makes it a good thing. But there's things that make a family vulnerable. Unfortunately, poverty is a big issue. Families are the fastest growing population of homeless people, because, if a father or a mother, and they're the main breadwinner, loses their job, oftentimes the whole family ends up on the street. Some families live in very dangerous neighborhoods where there's lots of violence, maybe drugs. There's, these things, if the parents don't have a lot of resources, if the parent is a single parent, doesn't have that support system, like I said, those can make them very vulnerable, and it's going to make them react to stress and different things very differently. So again, we just need to kind of understand where a family's coming from, and I always encourage you to play devil's advocate, because it's very easy for us to judge when we're not in someone else's shoes. And if we take a second and realize where they might be coming from and realize how we would react in that same situation. Discipline. Basically, with discipline, you want to focus on positive behavior and not on negative behavior. The hardest thing to do is when you have a little demon 2-year-old screaming at you, is to say, I say that lovingly, is to, ignore that bad behavior. When children want your attention, they will take your attention, whether it's positive, negative, whatever. They just want your attention. So if you respond negatively by yelling or, corporal punishment like spanking or hitting or whatever, they're still getting attention from you. So they're still going to act out because at the end result is they got your attention. If you ignore, even if it's bad, yelling is still attention. So if you ignore bad behavior, which is so hard to do, and focus on good behavior, it's like training. I hate to say it's like a dog or whatever, but it's really, you want to train them to act the way you want. Focus, lots of attention when they do something good. And that's like behavior modification. You can do things like consequences and timeout, but for timeout, we really don't do timeout longer than the age of the child. So it's 1 minute for every age of the child. So if the child is 2, a 2-minute timeout is sufficient. If you put a 2-year-old in timeout for 10 minutes, by minute 3, they're like, there's a flag. Why am I here? Mom, am I done? Like they have no idea why they're sitting in that corner. They forgot long ago. So timeouts need to be age appropriate, 4 minutes for a 4-year-old, those type of things. And like I said, just focusing on those good behavior and being consistent. Like that is also, because they're going to wear you down, man. They are good. And they are persistent little suckers. But being consistent about whatever, is really important. Consistent yourself and consistent with who you're parenting with. I find that very hard because my husband and I are very consistent with each other, but my father is not. And so there are things that I, sometimes get frustrated with because, like, no treats before, dinner or whatever, where Grandpa's like, come upstairs, I have snacks in the drawer, and I'm like, Dad, you can't do that. So, it's hard too because, they'll play that. So being consistent with everyone in the family on what the expectations are. So discussion between the adults is important so that everyone's on the same page. Some special parenting situations, adoption, especially if the child is adopted when they're an infant. Do you tell the child they're adopted? When do you tell them? We're having lots of international and interracial adoptions, so that's making things, I think adoption used to be more kind of taboo, like it was a unique thing, and being adopted wasn't good. Now they have like, it's your adoption day parties, and it's a big deal. It's a very special thing. Like, we loved you so much, we chose to have you in our family. So I don't think that's becoming as much of an issue as before, but sometimes it is for our family. Divorce, I'm going to talk about that in just a second. Single parenting, reconstituted, so family does get divorced, new family members coming in. Foster, dual earner families, more moms are working outside the home now. So that's just kind of changing how the family structure is. Divorce. So divorce affects kids really bad. And the big thing is they think they caused it. And we have to make sure they understand that they didn't. Okay? And then they say, well, mommy and daddy used to say, I love you all the time to each other. And now they don't love each other. So does that mean that they could stop loving me? So they're scared. They're scared that, what did I do? Did I cause this? Did I, will mommy, if I'm bad, will mommy stop loving me? If I don't, if I do something wrong, will daddy stop loving me? How is this going to change my routine? I used to have a big bedroom, and now I live with daddy and his girlfriend and their 5 kids, and we all share a bedroom. But at mommy's house, there's a different one boy, and I'm not used to living with a boy. So there's just, it causes all sorts of disruption for a child. And if there's anything a child likes, it's routine. Okay? Me too. I love routine. But for a child, it's very, very disruptive. And so emotionally, you have to make sure they understand that they're going to be safe, that they're going to be loved, that this is not their fault, and that you make transitions between houses and between this comfortable. They have a favorite stuffed animal they can bring back and forth, or a favorite toy or something. And talking with families, making sure that they're not using the kid as leverage, which we see a lot, is, them kind of playing the child against each other, communicating well with families. Other family trends, we're seeing smaller families. We used to see families with, 7 children, 8 children, 9 children. It's like they had nothing to do but to love each other.
We needed more kids to be on the farm to help take care of that, and now that's not
the same. So now you see families that have like 2 kids. You rarely see, bigger families than 4 now. You just don't see that often. Mothers are working outside the home more. They're much more health conscious. You'll see this all the time. My child is soy-free, lactate-free, only eats cherries on Tuesday. It has to, you'll see all this. Much more health conscious. multicultural families. Families are more mobile. They're moving around more. They don't, before we used to like, you lived in the house that you lived in for like your whole life. My kids are 9 and 11 and they've lived in 3 homes already. So, Dr. Chastain, you moved here. How old were your kids when you moved down here?
Let's see, 4 and 6.
Yeah. So they move, from one state to another. People are moving because they get new jobs, which was, or family situations bring them somewhere. So you're just seeing families be more mobile. And child abuse, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, is still an issue. Yes.
Isn't the economy a large portion of that as well? Like, it used to be you could literally work at McDonald's or sell shoes for a living and you would be able to support an entire family and the wife or whoever the partner was would be able to stay at home. And you can still have 4 or 5 kids. And nowadays it takes both parents working full time just to support 1 or 2.
Yep. Definitely. No, it's all of those things that factor. So, and that's why, like I said, it's so important to just take a step back and kind of realize what might this family be going through before we start judging. Like, oh, this mom is never here at the bedside. I did my whole shift today at All Children's, and the mom never came by. Well, what if that mom's a single mom trying to make sure her kids, she keeps that job? And it's easy for us to do that. I know before I had kids, I would be in a grocery store and I'd see a kid throwing a fit and I'd be like, huh, that mom doesn't have any control of her child. Now I'm like, oh, you better get up in that cart and be quiet or I'll beat you. Like, you like feel this. Yeah. I know. Like, I have to catch myself from like parenting other children because I'm protective of the mom, because I now feel that. So it's easy for us to judge. I'm guilty of judging, but we sometimes have to take a step back. Social, cultural, and religious influences. We said that part of the family is to teach them these things. The culture is like their learned beliefs, their values, their practices. But we don't ever want to assume something. Just because someone is a Jehovah's Witness doesn't mean that they won't accept blood. Just because someone is a Christian doesn't mean that they have to go to church on Sunday. Like, there's certain things that we think of when we think of certain cultures or ethnic group or racial groups. But we cannot stereotype. And we can't just assume that if they're Jewish, they're not going to eat pork. We need to ask them, like, is that a bad one?
No, it's just funny because my best friend is Jewish, and she had a baby naming, which if you have a girl, it's like they're, they have a baby naming, like at 8 days old or whatever. No, she's a little bit older anyway, it doesn't matter. And at the baby naming, like, they had like a little reception and they had pork.
Yeah.
It was the funniest thing ever.
Yeah.
Because my best friend is like, I tell her she's a bad Jew.
Yeah. And that's what you can't assume. You can't just assume. You have to ask them, like, especially when they're in the hospital. Children love routine. So now we're putting them in a hospital. They're out of their routine. They're out of their safe environment. What are the things we can do? What types of foods do you like? What kind of traditions do you follow? Remember, a lot of times they're in the hospital during holidays or during special events. What do you want to do to celebrate? Or how do you celebrate? What do you celebrate? What do you eat? Do you need to pray at a certain time every day? We need to take those things into consideration. Don't make any assumptions, and ask questions. Communication. Communication is really important. There's verbal communication, obviously, speaking, talking, nonverbal, your body language, your facial expressions. If, you're talking with a family and they're like, we are swingers and this, and you go, like, you got to learn how to, like, have a little bit of a poker face with them. Remember, our job is not to judge. Our job is to guide. Okay? And they may be doing something totally probably not great. Like, if they say, like, oh yeah, he loves cheeseburgers, so he gets them for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You can't be like, you can't do that. You just be like, oh, okay, well, normally what we recommend is that they have, you know, some fruits and vegetables and this and this. And how can we help you incorporate that into what he's eating? So you got to be, make sure your nonverbal communication. That's why we do that IPA and we talk about therapeutic communication. I know sometimes you guys are like, this is so stupid. Why am I doing this? But we ask you to, it's not just meant to be busy work. It's meant to kind of really reflect on what are you saying and how are you acting and how is that affecting your communication with the family. Abstract is playing or symbols. So kids communicate through abstract communication. They like to play. They like to role play. They want to play with your stethoscope. You're gonna use that. We're gonna talk about that with the pediatric assessment. We need to be silent and actually listen to them, not interrupt. That's really hard for me. I really like to talk. So learning to just hear what my patients are saying, not just being silent, but actually listening to and hearing what they're saying, being aware of their culture, and providing privacy. With kids a lot, we forget that they still want to be private. We start doing an exam and we take off all their clothes because they're 2 or 3, and what does it matter? But, I mean, my 9-year-old will be like, Mom, I need privacy, and then run across my house naked. But, even though that's probably the way it is, I mean, my children have no boundaries. I don't think I'll ever go to the bathroom or take a shower by myself, ever again. I think one time, this is probably TMI, but whatever, I was sitting on the toilet and I took a picture and I sent it to my best friend because my husband was standing there talking to me. My 2 dogs were sitting on the ground. I had my son laying on my lap and my daughter, and I was like, and I just took a picture and I was like, currently my life. I was like, because I was like, does everyone need to be in this small space at this moment, like right now? So everybody wants their privacy. And even if they don't care, they're like, oh, no big deal. We still need to offer that to them, okay? Grandparents. So we are unfortunately seeing a lot of grandparents parent again. And that's because we're seeing an increase, or not an increase, but we're seeing, substance abuse. We have a lot of teen pregnancies, and they're just not ready to parent. That's kind of how I feel. I'm putting my Chastain belt, or what is those things? Is that what chastity belt? Not Chastain.
I bet Steve would consider.
I know. I'm going to put a chastity belt on my daughter. You should patent that. Parents are incarcerated. They emotional problems. Maybe they're having some psych issues. And all of these reasons, if the parent can't parent because they're in jail or because they're using drugs or whatever, then the grandparent becomes the parent often. And grandparents weren't meant to parent. They were meant to grandparent, okay? Grandparents, they have reached the end of their lifespan, right? They are more tired. My dad makes it very clear that although he lives with us and doesn't work, he has 0 interest in babysitting my children on a regular basis. He does not want to be their after-school pickup every day because he naps between those hours. And he helps me out if I'm in like yesterday, he helped me out. It was an unusual situation. But that exhausted him. He'll be done for the next 3 days. So you're not going to get the same, I don't want to say quality, because grandparents can be great parents too, but for the most part, they're not meant to parent. And financially, they have set up for retirement, not to set up, because anyone who has children knows it is not cheap. So they're financially not set as well. So it can just be, it worked out very well for Simone Biles. Her grandparents came in and took over, and now she's an Olympian. But we don't always see those results. And I think that's it. All right. So in your theory course, I think Dr. Chastain did show you there, there's lecture material. So under course content, theory course, you'll see lecture material, and those are your PowerPoints. And right underneath there, there's one that says supplemental reading. It's like a one little pager that kind of addresses some of these slides. So if you need it, it's part of your reading to supplement the book because there's not as much in the book. So don't breeze over that. Make sure you review that. All right, you guys have any questions about that? Okay.